Finance Committee for the Town of Carver on January 6, 2020. Can we please rise for the pledge? Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you to Area 58 for recording tonight. Trust everybody had a good Christmas and New Year. Public comment. Do we have any? All right, Town Administrator update. He's going to be a few minutes, so why don't we go through the minutes from the last meeting? We can get that out of the way.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, my name is misspelled in a couple of spots, so
Okay.
if I can mention that.
CWEI, right? They got IE. You know what that is? That's autocorrect does that.
Oh, that's all right. I run into it on my own computer, and then it's on the bottom of another page. Thank you very much.
I'll fix it.
Thank you.
Usually I have an E on the end of mine, so I understand.
It's like that with my maiden name.
Yeah, we'll fix it.
I make a motion to approve the minutes with the correction of the spelling of the name.
A second.
Motion made and seconded to accept the minutes as amended. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? 10.
Not being here last, do I say absent or?
You can abstain.
Abstain.
Oi. I too will abstain. I wasn't here for the meeting.
Okay. So we're 8-0-1. Okay. We're still waiting for the town administrator. Well, let's talk about the next meeting. Well, we don't know what we're going to do with the next meeting yet, 'cause we don't know what we're going to have for departments, so we can't do that either.
Can we set the date and time?
We're not sure if we're going to have a second meeting this month or not.
Okay. I thought we were.
I think we are, but I'm not certain of that yet. It depends on what other departments are. Yeah, you know what? Let's set the date. Set the date. In fact, tentatively, let's run through it. Martin Luther King Day is 2 Mondays from now, so I assume that, yeah, the town hall will be closed.
Yeah, so
Go to the next Monday?
We can go to the next Monday, the 27th. Monday seemed to work.
Yep.
That's pretty obvious.
Good.
27th is good? All right, so let's do the 27th of January. How about February? Want to shoot for the 10th and 24th? And then we'll leave it at that.
yeah, those days work for me.
Everybody okay with the 10th and 24th of February?
Yep.
All right, so those will be the next 3 meetings, will be January 27th, February 10th, and 24th. Any changes, and I'll shoot out an email, let you guys all know. Perfect.
January?
February 10th and 24th. Okay, perfect. Mr. Malinowski, are you prepared?
Mr. Chairman, I'm very fortunate that due to Meg's extra efforts, the answer to that question is yes. Hot off the press, we're going to be going through part of the budget tonight. This is really unusual for me to use the podium, but since you have a full committee, it
We
really,
actually have-
you took my seats and everything.
We have,
There's no
well,
room
there's
for
another
me.
table missing, but we have 10 members here tonight.
All right.
Out of 11, Steve texted me and said he was stuck up in Portland, so, but he would try to get here maybe by 8 o'clock, and I told him it was no worries.
If he's in Portland, I think we'd rather have him be safe and not try to make it back
That's pretty much
here in
what I
time.
said.
All right, how's everybody this lovely evening? Everybody ready for budget stuff?
Oh, yeah.
Isn't it exciting? All right.
Favorite time of year?
Where the paper flows like inexpensive toilet paper,
That's not Mr. Jermaine.
single ply.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
So, Mr. Chairman, since you gave me the opening, I just have to take advantage of it. You know, we would have done this back in December, but we've been dealing with toilet paper gate, and it slowed down some of the progress that, that we've had. Okay, so I generally like to clear up any misinformation. Sometimes there's stuff on Facebook that people jump on with taking things out of context.
No.
This is the annual budget process, and with that, under Chapter 3, established by our state legislature, which created the Town Administrator Act in Carver, under Section 3.4.3.2, the town administrator's financial management duties are to prepare and present the annual operating budget. So that's where we're going to start with this document. We have been working diligently with our finance staff, who's done a great job and makes here to answer any technical questions that I can't, to continue the process that we've done over the last few years. And obviously, we're required to present a balanced budget, but at the same time, make sure that budget is consistent with our financial management policies. Notice I didn't hand those out to you tonight because I've done it for the last 3 meetings, and you know, we've got enough copies of them,
It's
trying
on
to
the
save some
website
paper. It's on the
also.
website too. Everything I'm going to talk to tonight is consistent with our financial management policies that put the town in a very good stead as things move forward. With that, it's important to have some context and some metrics to understand where our town is from the standpoint of different departments and how they operate and how budgets are set and how people are paid. And this document that you have in front of you, I started this about 5 or 6 years ago. And what this document is, it's a chart of cost of living and step increases for all unions and non-union employees. I'm going to break this up into 2 pieces. The left half is just what a cost of living would be. The right half has that cost of living plus whatever the standard steps are for different departments. It's important for everyone to recognize that in the municipal world, in order to avoid prejudicial treatment, is that, and that's one of the reasons, is that salaries for different positions are done by grade and also step. Grade is the row, and the grade is based upon what the value of that position is. Some positions pay more than other positions. If we have, and I'm not going to pick on anyone in particular here, but a finance director's position would pay a little bit different than any other position. I don't want to pick anything out because somebody will hold me accountable for that. So that's the grade going across. Again, certain positions have more worth than others, or more value because of the educational skill requirements or the level of activity that has to happen. Then from there, we have what's called steps. The steps, at least for all of the town contracts, all have a 2% increase in those between each step. That's something that the selectmen have successfully negotiated over the last few years so that there's consistency. Now, what you have in this document, too, is also the non-town employees, which would fall under the Teachers Association. We did not break down bus drivers or other positions in the school. We just focus on the teachers. The teachers in their steps have 5% for all of their base steps in between each year, and then their upper steps can have up to 12.5%. Again, it's a different contract. It's apples and oranges. That's up for the school committee to negotiate. I'm just putting it here in context. So that being said, is focusing on the column, the section on the left, what you have is this is a running average for the last 15 to 16 years, starting with clerical, then operation and maintenance, then dispatch, police, teachers, and non-union. And if you look at the bottom of that column, you'll see what the average has been over those years for each one of those pay grades, whatever they may be. Highlighted are years where there was no COLA negotiated due to negotiations and/or financing of the town. And so I highlight those zeros because, you know, there's been some groups that always complain about they've taken a zero, and they may have, and that's fine. But what have they done in context of others? And that's why we have this sheet, just to show what's in context of others. As you'll see on the clerical and O&M, they've averaged about 1.1%. Police dispatch and police average about 1.4. Teachers is 1.8. And non-unions is 0.09. There's 0.9. So again, that's the cost of living that gets tied into these documents. Then if we go to the right side of the page, there again are years where there's no cost of livings, but sometimes people are still eligible for their step increase, and that shows what the step increase would have been for those particular years. As you will notice in FY11, there were 3 particular groups that didn't even get a step increase, so they got a 0 across the board for that 12-month period, straight across. Pat, you may remember 2011. I don't, but particularly in this town, but it was a tough year.
It was.
It was a tough year. So again, this just gives comparison because this would be the net increase with their COLA and their step increase, just so you can see on both sides of the document where they are. Again, you're still running the clerical operation and maintenance, dispatch, and police in the low 3%. Teachers for the bottom steps is about 6.8%, and then non-union runs about 2.6%. So the other takeaway that I want you to have with this document is that, and for many of you that know me, this is unusual, but I think the time is right, and I think it's also trying to make up for past inequalities that have happened. So what you see here is there was that period of 2, 4, 6, 8, 9 years where there was a 0% COLA for non-union employees, which is why their average is down so much compared to the rest of the group. So this year, due to the tremendous work of all of our department heads and our budget analysis through Meg, is that we are able to propose a 3% COLA increase for non-union employees, which is why you see in FY21 the 3% at the top right there. So again, that's the proposed for this year. The last 3 years I was able to do 2. This year I'm able to fit 3% into that. And again, I'm giving you the context so you can understand why I'm doing this. It's not that I just recommend paying people. It's that I'm trying to be fair and equitable to the extent that's possible in the world that we live in with public sector employment. Anyone have any questions on that? Meg, did I miss anything in that scenario analysis? No. Any questions?
Michael,
Yes.
who falls under that non-union category?
So non-union category is in essence anyone that's not in one of the other bargaining units. So it is, again, anyone who's not in the police, all of the fire department staff falls under that because they're not union. None of the police do except for the police chief and soon to be deputy police chief because that was approved by the union. We do have a few employees in the police department that are non-union. And I'm just going through my memory as I go around here. Let's see.
EMS is non-union.
EMS, yep, EMS is non-union. Let's see. In town hall, staff in my office, they're all considered confidential employees, so they wouldn't be considered union. In addition to that, we would have, I think in our finance department that we proposed, we'd taken a few positions out of the union that's in that proposal that was there. Some COA employees, veterans, again, all the department heads, a few library employees. That's all that's coming to the top of my head. So it's a range. It's a range of all different types that's in there.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions? Pat, you're awful quiet. You've been through this process before.
Many times. I'm good. Keep it
Okay.
up.
Anything else? Okay. Come on, Bill. Come on, Bill. At least was this done fairly?
What's that?
Was it at least done fairly?
Appears to me.
All right, that's about the best compliment I'm going to get out of you, and that's what I appreciate. Because I know you're not going to stand up and jump up and down and say, this is a great idea to do 3%. But as long as it was done fair and equitably, that's my goal.
It is a great idea. That's how you on to quality people.
You know, Mike, I'll ask you a question too.
Sure.
Are a lot of the employees who go through those, I guess, leaner times,
Yep.
are a lot of them still here, active in these roles today?
I would say probably half.
Half.
Just a guess. And literally, that's just a guess.
Yep.
I know that in those leaner years, we have had employees that have left because of they were going to other towns and, or other positions and significantly making more. I think what's important to recognize too, and I've said this before, is overall, Carver is significantly lower in its pay scales than many other communities our size and in our geographical area. We're not at the very bottom, but we're closer to the bottom than we are to the middle. We've been trying to change that. We've been trying to slowly, incrementally change that. But at the end of the day, we still have to have a balanced budget. I think the solars helped us do that a little bit, and a lot of the restructuring. And, my first year that I got here, that I think the first budget I did must have been 2017, Meg? Or was it 16? Okay. Maybe I gave 2 zeros in a row. So I know I gave one. I wasn't sure if I gave 2. But, part of it was a lot of restructuring happened at that time because we were laying off people. Mm-hmm. And we had to go through a 2-year process of restructuring. And, Adam, you were involved with school building at that time. That required some significant layoffs to make those structural moves, and that's required people to work more and do more things than they may have done before. But I think overall that we have a really good staff running the town right now at all different levels. Yes, Bill.
The median income of the town too doesn't necessarily compare with other towns, so that factors into all this stuff?
Our median income, I want to say it was $90-some thousand. I think from a HUD census standpoint, I think it's $90-some thousand. Yeah, and now again, that's not going to compare to a Duxbury, and that's not going to compare to Marion, but I think it's comparable to what we're having around here. I think it's a little bit higher than Middleborough and Rochester, but it's on the federal census is what that median income is. I remember it's 90-something, I believe, for household income. Any questions? Okay. So what you have in front of you is a 1.5-page document that kind of goes over items that fall within the finance department and also items that fall within the Department of Community Living, and I've also just tied in some HR items in here too, just to make those happen. So what you have across the document is what the first column, second column. First column is the description. The second column is the actual spend in 2019 based upon what was in that category at that time. Sometimes over the years we change categories a little bit, but that's a rarity. There may be a few that have changed, but not the majority of them. Then we have what the proposed budget was in 2020, which is what we're currently working through right now. And then with that, then the blue column is what the different departments have requested. And then the last column with, I'm not quite sure what color that is, that is the recommendation column that I have to bring forward to everybody for their review. Again, same process we do every year. The only difference compared to this and 5 or 6 years ago is that you're being presented a balanced budget from the get-go. I've only included these departments right here. I have the rest in there, but that's all we were discussing tonight, so that's why this is what you have, and I'll have the rest for you at the next meeting. So, just going down the expenses, and I'm going to just provide commentary for some of these items, and at any particular point, stop me. Let's see. So in the first section is really the town-wide utilities, which, kind of falls under the finance department, and we look at, how we allocate those funds around town. You'll see that in 2019, we spent $361,000. Last year, we had proposed $420. This year, we're back down to $361. There's a reason for that, and with that, we've made several upgrades in the town that we don't believe our utilities are going to be running as high as they did in the past, so we think that the 360 is a very safe number. With that, you're going to see in the first column, we dropped down the telephone expenses from $32,000 to a lower number to $30,000. What we have done with the upgrades of the elementary school is we got rid of a lot of copper lines in the town. Those were individual lines with individual bills every month that we were paying. Now with our town-wide network that we have in fiber is that all of our phones are done voice over IP for both the school and the town. So with that, we were able to get rid of a bunch of phone lines that we no longer needed. There's still going to be some additional reduction in this as we implement the new police station and take off some additional lines that they have. But it's amazing how much that actually starts to save. So we're taking a little reduction into that category. And again, if money isn't spent in a particular category, it rolls up into free cash at the end of the year, so it just goes into what was saved. From there, we have our gasoline budget. We do have $15,000 additional budget in that compared to what the spend was in 2019. We're actually anticipating that may go down as well because with some of the initiatives that the police department has done through the police chief, a lot of our new cruisers have new sensors on them, so that you used to, when you took a cruiser out to do a detail on the street, the engine would run for the 8 hours the officer was there to keep the battery charged so the lights would go off. Well, now with all the LED lights, you don't have as much electricity draw, so the batteries can handle it. But these new cars have sensors on it, so it'll draw off the battery. When the battery starts to go below a certain level, the car will start back up, charge the battery, and then turn back off. So again, just more little issues that we're trying to do to save fuel in the town.
Where's the diesel?
What's that?
Where's the diesel?
The diesel is, so our arrangement with the school is the town pays for the gas and the school pays for the diesel. I do not know why that is, but it works out relatively fairly, but Pat was in charge of that, so asked him. Or he would inherit it, maybe.
That's the way it was.
That's the way it was. Okay. So,
So the DPW gets the diesel provided by the school?
correct. And then
All
the school,
buses are diesel?
the school buses are diesel. That's the main use of diesel in the town. And then all of the other school vehicles use gas, which the town pays for. And we've ran some numbers. It's close enough to balance it out.
Back it up to the telephone for a minute.
Yes.
Does that include cell phones? Or is that a separate item for employees?
We really don't have many people with cell phones in the town. In some of the union contracts, we have a stipend built into their salary.
Okay.
But we've really gotten out of the cell phone business. We may have a few inspectors that have cell phones, but beyond that, we're trying to stay out of the cell phone business.
Okay.
How much is the stipend?
I think it's really for operation and maintenance. What's it, $20 a month, $30 a month? 25? 30. All right, so I guess it's $30 a month. Now, with that, when we built it into the contract, is anytime we use an app or anything, they're required to use it in order to get the stipend. So there's a reason why we do that, because it also has a GPS component that we can keep, make sure no one gets hurt or injured. And it's a safety component that's in there. We do have cell phones. I take that back. In all the police cruisers, they have a cell phone card, but that's in the police budget. And then in the fire department, they do have several cards as well that are tied into all the engines and EMS too. But individual phones, we really don't have too many.
I'm assuming that someone like Dave Seidenthoff and John Woods gets a cell phone. Is it a town cell phone, or is it their own cell phone and they get stipend to reimburse them for the use of it, or?
I think they have them, and it might be built into their contract.
Well, it would have to have. I mean, you
Yes.
gotta be able to get a hold of them.
Yeah. Oh, they have them. I believe it's built into their contract. And that's kind of, you got to a point where people were carrying 2, 3 cell phones around, and,
Yep. So now the next stupid question I'm gonna ask, electric and street lights, I'm assuming that you're looking at the reduction in the cost of electricity for the street lights for those that have been converted?
So I won't even go any more than that, because you just gave my thunder away, is why that one's lower. Can I go into propane gas?
Actually,
Go
for
ahead.
getting back to the gasoline.
Sure.
Is the police department looking at the hybrid cruisers that are now available?
So what we do have is, there has been a push. To answer your question, we are looking at all different options that are out there. I think the first thing we did is that module that I mentioned this there. There has been a discussion on changing over a lot of police fleets to diesel cars that have the reinforced cages with components they can replace. So that's another trend that's happening right now. I think, I will say this, it appears that the police interceptor models are going through kind of a rehab, because they're trying to balance whether they're hybrids, whether they're not hybrids, and how that all plays out.
Yeah, I know Fleet Week, recently I watched a video and they had a hybrid Durango police cruiser.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
they are making them.
I think,
And I think with the green communities, that would,
well, yes, I mean, now with the green communities, we're not required to buy frontline public safety vehicles that are that. However, I will say that I think that the industry's going to change to start to go in that direction. I think with public safety, they just want to have some level of, I don't want to say protection, but experience that these hybrids are working for them to do what the job is that they need to do. But it certainly would be my goal to have those purchased in the future when they're commercially ready and available to do that, because they just save money, there's no doubt about it. And I would tell you, my little Prius Prime, when I'm on battery, that baby's fast.
Ford Fusion hybrid.
Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah, and I know Alan always looks to be like that, but I'll take him on. You put a Corvette next to me, I'll get you for the first couple 100 feet. When you're in 5th gear, I don't know about that, but we'll get you off the starting line. The next item says propane gas. That's actually propane and natural gas. So that's, again, it's about $12,000 up from what the actual spend was in 2019. And then oil, we're pretty much on the same target. We're just using less oil with some of our upgrades that we've done on different facilities. So overall, when you look at the total request, it nets out to being $360,000, which again is what we spent in 2019. But with some of the additional savings we're having and the baseline and fuel costs that we're anticipating over the next 12 months. That's the other thing too, is we do lock in contracts. So we do get, 12, 18-month stabilization contracts when we go out and buy futures on electric and natural gas and on fuel too. So we have some stability that we have with that. That's utilities. Going to the next most important department in the town that asked for probably the largest percent increase of all departments in the town. Yep.
That's huge. It's
Yeah,
also not enough.
Yeah. Went from $2,800 to $3,800.
I left my violin at home. The salary is gonna be short because we are a full board now, and I'm assuming the salary number is the stipends. So you have 11 members on the board,
Yep.
so that number's gonna be 1,800 if all 11 remain on the board.
We can accommodate that. He got us. Congratulations on stumping me. And Meg.
Well, it's because we have such a devoted full board.
It is absolutely correct, and given the history of this board, it's not something we looked at, and you got
Well,
us.
it wouldn't be. This is, I've said this before, this is the first time in over 20 years this board has been this size.
Yep.
Typically, the board has been 5 and 6 people, total. So,
I will be transferring money out of the town administrator's selectmen's account before our next meeting to accommodate that.
okay.
What's the dues and members?
I'm sorry?
What is dues and members?
That's in case there's a, an MMA function that we go to, we have to pay, the town actually pays for any member, like the annual meeting's coming up.
Yeah.
Those that want to go the end of this month, and I was going to talk about that at the end. There's a fee. The town will pay the fee. It will not pay your overnight lodging in Boston, but it will pay the tickets to go. So that's where this comes out of that fund, out of that budget.
All right, I was wondering what the "and" members mean.
Yeah, the seminar and training, and then the dues and members, it's,
It's really
Membership?
membership. It's, yeah, membership,
and
yeah.
anything
Yeah.
that
yeah,
professional memberships.
yeah.
So as Alan mentioned, we do have the MMA annual conference coming up. It's a Friday, Saturday event. Friday is usually the more intellectual day where they have more seminars and programs that are in that. It's at the Heinz or Sheridan in Boston. Again, I'd encourage anybody that's interested in municipal finance and understanding how local government works to go. It's informative. There's different sessions, just like at any convention. You pick where you want to go. You'll find other finance folks there. They do have a trade show. You can talk to other, vendors that are out there and see different softwares or products or whatever it may be. It's interesting.
It's a
So-
huge trade show.
Yeah.
It's real big. It's the 24th and 25th of this month. Anybody that wants to go, just shoot me an email, and I'll get you all registered, those that want to attend. I'm not sure if I'm going. I think, Meg, you said you're going. Beth, usually you like to partake in that stuff. I might. I'm not sure I'll go both days, but I might go Friday.
Yep. If you're only going one day, I'd recommend the Friday, but the Saturday's good too. This Friday has just a little bit more events.
So, I'll send out an email to everybody this week with a flyer on it. And I didn't bring it up earlier because it was too far in advance. We had the holidays and stuff, and as we get closer, we can certainly get registered.
You have a copy of the agenda for those?
Yes, it's in the latest issue also. I'll get it out to you. I have the whole thing. Not gonna pay for the suite at the Hyatt, but can't have everything.
All right.
So I didn't mean to derail you.
Well, you already did on the finance committee. We under budgeted.
Clerical services, actually, we're gonna have to go back to it.
Yeah, clerical services.
Clerical services, I'm assuming this is where we're gonna pay
Yeah.
Kelly? Or maybe we're not gonna pay Kelly anymore.
I think maybe what we need to do, it could be a thing. I'm just wondering, in using members, I'm wondering if we need to just add a line for other professional services and maybe move some of that money up, but then we may also have to add some money.
I don't think so. I think the 1,500 in seminar and training is plenty.
Yeah.
And the dues and members should be turned into clerical services and, call it a miscellaneous if you have to.
Like maybe leave some money to.
Yeah.
Because we need it for the ATFC or something. The finance committee, like the Association of Town Finance Committee.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I can move that.
That's a membership fee.
Yeah, but I can move some of that money up into the clerical.
Okay. Otherwise, we can't pay Kelly this week, sorry.
Kelly, don't worry, you still get
Just buy me a laptop.
Kelly, we always pay you.
And I brought this up to Meg because the FinCom did have the double meetings during the summer with the townwide sustainability. And originally, the clerical account, I think, only had $500 in it to pay the recording secretary, and I know we made it work, but if we go 2 meetings this month, 2 meetings next month, and then we start getting back into the sustainability study for the summer, or the nicer weather, where we could potentially have a couple meetings a month, one regular FinCom and then one for the sustainability. I just don't want to have that account run short. So I'll leave it up to you.
So just again for background, we operate by the bottom line of the department, so that there is the ability of moving money in between the categories.
There you go.
We try to keep them accurate from a budgetary standpoint, so we can see where it is, and we book them that way. But at the end of the year, we're focused on the 3825, is to make sure that we stick to that number. But Meg will make those changes as discussed.
I have a,
Which will now be 4825, because we're going to be bringing in enough money to make sure we pay the committee salaries.
That may be actually too much. We may not need this 2850 between the two. I have to have you look at the actual from last year and see
The
what
only
you
thing
think.
is I wonder on a report, like halfway through the year, to see where you're trending.
Yeah. Just because the committee's so big, and technically, if 10 of us wanted to go to that MMA annual meeting and it's $65 a person to go,
Well, see, and that's where we're running into trouble, because I think that the nature of the budget is changing a little bit. You have more members, you're going to more classes, so we need to do like look at it halfway through the year and then kind of build going forward what you
Okay.
anticipate.
all right.
Having said that, is that we do have another training account that we keep for town-wide, so if for whatever reason, all 10 or 11 you wanted to go there, and even if it's not in the budget, it's in another budget to deal with town-wide issues.
Okay.
So we do have that, if you will, reserve fund for training and extra hours that may be needed, including for Kelly.
It's just in the full transparency of things,
Yep.
that's all. When it comes to this committee, I want every bit of that to be as clear-cut as possible. Just for the transparency of it all.
Sure.
Yes,
I
ma'am.
have a question, Mike. On the dues and members, are we given, well, I don't want to say, we're given funds to pay dues for certain things that belong to each individual, or is it I'm not saying this right, so.
Sure.
But anyway, what dues and members, anyway?
So we're going to just clarify that that's dues and membership, so we'll add that additional language to it with the next update. So generally for Finance Committee is that there's the statewide Finance Committee Association, and then there's programs that are offered throughout the year. You have the annual MMA conference that we've just talked about. There's also an annual Finance Committee Association training seminar. And then throughout the year is that occasionally there's some other finance-related items that the MMA puts on. So really all this dues and membership really just goes to paying your seat to go to an MMA event. It's really all focused on MMA, which is the Mass Municipal Association that provides this training.
Much like Conservation has some stuff, and the town pays for the members of the Conservation Commission to go.
Yeah, it's not on an individual basis, it's for the group as a whole.
Cool, thank you.
All righty. Moving on to Finance Department. So with each department, you have the top group, which is basically payroll and extra hours and overtime. And then the second group, which is really the supplies and the services that a department would be looking at. So as we look at the Finance Department, in 2000, and now again, keep in mind that we have proposed a reorganization that you guys approved, and the selectmen approved that as well. So this budget is all based upon that reorganization with those new positions. Okay, so these numbers reflect that. Last time we came to meet with you, we didn't have numbers because we wanted to start with the org chart first, get that approved, and now this incorporates that org chart. So with that, in 2019, we spent $459,000. In 2020, we spent $470,000. And in 2021, we're proposing, from a staffing standpoint, of spending $504,000. So as we go through here, just a couple of things I want to point out. One is that our finance director and our two chiefs of both police and fire, tomorrow night in executive session, I am working with the Board of Selectmen on their contract extensions to get them to commit for another 5 years. With that, they're each getting proposed somewhere around in addition to everything else that's standard in the contract, a one-time about 2.5% plus or minus salary increase, just to change their base up by about 2.5%, again, on top of the other things that they do get. So so that is in there, and that's what's reflected here in Meg's salary. But also, like was done with my salary a few years ago, is the contract that I inherited. You needed a PhD to figure it out. Is that part of my salary was paid in the salary line item, part of it was paid out of the health insurance line item, part of it was paid out of the life insurance line out. A little bit was paid out of the gas account, and there was a couple other accounts that it was paid out of. That's how it happened over the years. So what we did is, over a 2-year period, is we consolidated that, Alan remembers that, so that it's just one number. And so there's full transparency as to how my salary is. We're doing the same thing with police, fire, and with the finance director. Now, theirs aren't as complicated as that, but you'll see down a little bit lower is contractual obligations. That in 2020, there was $5,000 budgeted for that. That's zero going out. So that contract obligation line item doesn't exist anymore, because the contract obligation was to the finance director. So now that's embedded into the number that you have up there. Again, just so that there's more clarity as to where the numbers are. From there, we are adding the assistant finance director position that you see there in 2021. The rest is, and also the payroll coordinator was initially in the treasurer collector staff, which was $115,000, and that's been reduced down to $78,000. So that salary for the payroll coordinator was embedded, because that was a union position. We're pulling it out of the union. That's why it's a separate line item that you see in there. And then we just have our standard overtime. So that's the fundamental change that you see with those numbers. Again, more clarity with the finance director's position, about a 2.5% overall increase, and creating the assistant finance director position, and also changing some of the staffing for treasurer collector and moving that into a payroll coordinator position role.
The accounting staff, is that the reduction from an individual?
That is correct, yes. So part of that was a reduction from an individual going down to 2 part-time people, and you also have the same issue with the assessing staff. That's also being reduced. Those 2 reductions, in essence, pay for the assistant finance director, which is why your change year over year is $34,000 in total, because a lot of it is just restructuring positions.
When we restructure it, we're gonna have any like severance costs?
No, severance costs, the answer to that is no. That being said, is that there may be some unemployment costs that are tied to this, but we do have money set aside for unemployment issues should that happen. We have that set aside in a separate fund. And this is something Pat can also talk about too, is that, back in that 2011, when there were some layoffs that happened down there, if you don't have funds set aside outside the budget for unemployment, towns are self-insured. So that means if you needed to lay off 2 people from a budgetary number, really you need to lay off 3, because you need 1 person to pay for the unemployment of the other 2. So we have that as a separate item outside the budget. It just rolls from year to year as needed. So that's the salary component to the finance department. Meg, did I miss anything? Any questions on, and again, you approved the structure. This is now how the numbers play into that for the changes that we were talking about. All right, below that, is the operation cost of the department. You see that was budgeted around $200,000 last year. This year, the request was 223. I did reduce that down to 218, and I'll be able to explain why I did that in a moment. I think the biggest jump you're going to see is in assessing contractual stuff that's being outsourced and to provide additional consulting in. I think we've had Mr. Pratt go through the explanation of why that's necessary. So we are having professionals outside of the department do a little bit more work on that as things move forward. So that's where you see a larger change that's in there. What you do see also is an equipment rental. You see a reduction down from what the original request was. And primarily what that is based upon is we're moving a lot of the technology out of the department budgets. And what I mean by that is the computers and everything are now in a townwide IT account. And this year, coming up in 2021, we're also going to be having a central purchase for all of the copiers, both in the school and in the town. So in essence, we're pulling that money out of the operation money, and that's going to be covered in our capital budget, which is already in the capital plan that I've already presented to you. So that'll be covered in that fashion rather than in an operational budget. Many of these copiers you lease for 3 to 5 years, and it just made sense to do that as a town-wide account than having what happened in the past. I inherited each department had their own copier with their own copier company, and I've been trying to change that back, and with this, we now will. So we'll have one state contract for everything, and that also helps with toners and supplies and all that other stuff. From there, it's all pretty self-explanatory. A little more money in training, another $1,000 in that at the bottom, and dues and membership went down a little bit, but really you're about a $18,000 increase from 2020 from a operational standpoint, given all of the changes that we're making in the department. Meg, I presented your budget. Did you want to do that? Sorry. Anybody have any questions on Meg's budget that she just presented?
What do you guys do for advertising for finance?
That would be for the assessing office, so like the tax classification. There may be, or the treasurer collector's office, they will announce when tax bills are going out or when they're due, that kind of things.
Good question. Any more finance questions? All right. Next item we have is legal services. Legal services, we spent $93,000 in 2019. That was actually a larger year because we had a bunch of contractual negotiations that were going on. I'd like to say that 2020 is going to be below that, but 2020 may be slightly above that with some of the craziness that's happened with the playground and some other things. But we see those as anomalies, and they're not consistent with how we normally have our legal budget for the town, which, my goal was always to keep that under $80,000. Barring unusual stuff that's out of our control. So that's why we're down to $100,000 for our legal budget for 2021. Next item, data processing. You see that as a 0. I've sort of alluded to that earlier when I was talking about the copiers, is as the town side of our government took over all of the operation and maintenance for the buildings and the fields, the school department took over all the operation and maintenance for our IT. And what we have is through our capital budget, so that's the operational cost. Through our capital budget, all of the infrastructure, new computers, upgrades to servers, et cetera, all come out of our capital budget. So there's no longer any need for the town to manage the data processing, which is why that's not there. In essence, that money goes to O&M to pay for Dave Seegan's off salary. So it's kind of the swap that went back and forth with the town, where we also modified the percent changes for the town and the school that we talked about at the last two meetings. Okay,
Can we back up a second to legal again?
sure.
That number is assuming a standard year, is that assuming I know there's a new rate that KP's charging us?
Mhm.
So this takes into account that number?
Yeah.
And we feel that that's gonna be adequate barring something silly?
Something silly, yes. We try to avoid the silliness.
You wanted 80,000 to the goal, so it's 20,000, something silly. Is that-
Well, I'm hoping that 20,000 rolls into free cash at the end of the year, but that's my silly buffer.
What is the good part? Any of these numbers that come in under
Yeah.
is really a give back, and it ends up in free cash, and so it's not like, there's not a party, though it would be nice.
No part.
No party.
Just so you know, somehow at the MMA conference, everybody sticks me with the tab, so there's your party. I still don't know how I get the short end of the straw on that, but it's okay. There you go.
It's on page 72 of the contract, isn't it? I thought so.
If only I'd written that part in divisible ink. Anyway, all right, so any more questions on that? I'm going to go into Department of Community Living.
I just wanted to touch on the legal fees, that's all.
Okay.
Thank you.
Unfortunately, Carol Julius could not attend. She had a prior commitment that I couldn't get her out of, and Alan and I were coordinating this schedule late last week. But Dan Badger, who has helped us with putting this whole program together, is here to answer any technical questions that I may not adequately explain. With the Department of Community Living, again, that's a combination, if you will, of the library trustees, the Council on Aging, and also the Recreation Committee that all will be sort of overseeing and coordinating a bunch of the activities that occur within this department. Each one of those boards still maintains its full autonomy and its full powers and authority that it does. It's just that this staffing mechanism, as was approved by you guys and also by the Board of Selectmen, just allows for better opportunities for the staff to meet the needs and hopefully provide better services for these three different boards. So with that, we're pretty much, let's see, I think the big change that we have in here is that we are adding a Deputy Director of Outreach and Awareness. We're also adding in some additional veteran agent support, as well as some additional COA salaries, another part-time person to help in this endeavor. So we're going from a combined $451,000 budget to a $513,000 budget, is what you see as the main change that's happening here from a staffing standpoint. Again, this is consistent with the org chart that you approved and the Board of Selectmen approved as well.
What's included in that recreation salaries component?
So the recreation salaries, okay, so I'm glad you asked that question, because there's two components of the recreation salary. One of the pieces is not in here. Okay, so this $8,000 is really for summer help, it's really for student interns, it's for lifeguards, it's for doing tennis programs. We want to offer more student jobs in the summer, and that's what that would, in essence, cover, that we have part-time students, seasonal students coming in for that. The other piece for the recreation salary comes directly out of our free cash allocation, which is the way we've done it for the last 2 years. So that comes as an outside budget item that covers the salary for Emily that does the recreation piece. So that's a good point. That is not built into this budget. That's a separate outside component at this point.
Is there any talk of including that in the budget and what that?
So there is, it just creates some complications with labor and structure of contracts and how all that's done, that by bringing it inside, we'd have to then look at that and figure out how that plays in. So given given how things were, given how we were looking at the overall issue, we decided not to touch, we decided to do that the same way we did it the last 2 years, this way. I will tell you this, that next year, once we have this set up, we will take some more time to look at that and try to pull that into the budget next year. Because I do think that, this year the priority was to create these two departments, to reorganize the finance, and create this, and get this new position filled in here. And then I think next year it's going to be to tweak all of that system that's in here. But I would like to see it in here. I just couldn't make it happen this year for a bunch of reasons.
Will the recreation department be presenting again this year? I think they did last year, their budget, even though it was in the free cash.
I'm going to be honest with you. I haven't had a chance. Mary Ross and I were exchanging emails this weekend. I didn't follow up with her today. But I suspect they will have something to say before we get to town meeting. Jim, I owe Mary a call. We were exchanging emails. I just didn't finish it up. So that's the Department of Community Living from a staffing standpoint. Then from there, if we go to the bottom of the page and to the top of the next page, looking at all the different charges that were done between the different departments, we added about $6,000 overall to those items, and that is spread out between just a few minor items that we have in here. Some additional books.
What is their telephone charge? Because the telephone, you said we have the town-wide telephone charge.
Yes, so the telephone charge for that, I believe that should better be labeled Wi-Fi. It's, I believe the library has the modules, the Wi-Fi pods you can get.
Well, also, it is their internet service.
It's their
Because you go over to the library, you can get like a hotspot.
That's it, hotspot.
But I'm not even sure that is out of their budget, but definitely their internet does too, right? I think really it should be relabeled internet at some point, or we'll see if they haven't changed that. So I guess it's a misnomer, it's really internet.
It's a good question. We will look
Is
at that.
the library tied into the new whole system?
So the answer is yes and no. The libraries in Massachusetts, particularly on the Old Colony Network, have their own internal network that connect all the libraries, where they're able to share large volumes of digital books and online archives. So they technically have their own service, but they are tied into our town service for some other things that are here. But, as Meg's mentioning, there is some outside charges for that. And I'm glad you pointed that out, because we'll clarify that.
I think it has to do with the sales network.
The sales next,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah, 'cause I think they have their own system with the sales
Okay.
network.
And the
We'll get you some more
computer-
information on that.
Okay.
And Meg, let's just talk to Carol and while Dan, I see Dan taking notes over there too. We'll just get better clarification on that, and we'll make the changes in the budget just to better explain what that is.
The computer expense is for the computers, the physical computers at the library, or is that the library and the COA? And why wouldn't you just tie that into the IT?
Okay, so that may be more of what Meg is saying, that's tied into their sales. Sales is the Old Colony Network type thing that's in there. That may be their annual fee.
Wait, which line?
The computer
Computer
expenses.
Computer
You
expenses.
got 26,000 on
Yeah,
one page.
That's an assessment from sales to being able to be part of the network.
Say that again?
It's an assessment that the sales network, that's because what happens is you go into the sales network, you get folks from other libraries, and
Uh-huh.
it's be delivered to the town. So that service, that's that charge, it's an assessment.
Can you just go on Amazon and buy the book?
You can buy the book.
You could buy the book, but you can't get it, the library. So like, let's say Marion has a book I want, I go to the Carver Library has it delivered from Marion, I pick it up at Carver.
For $26,000 a year?
No, I do it for free.
Yeah, but
It's also, there's audiobooks.
but we're paying the
Yeah.
26,000.
It's audiobooks, it's like, you can download a book like on your Kindle, it's a whole bunch of different services, it's not just books. I think it's all, it may also have to do with passes that they have.
And again, it's not just hard books anymore, it's take a book on tape, or now it's a book on video, or whatever it is. Yeah, whatever, and then, you know, Marion may own that volume that's there, you know, and then that electronic volume, but then this service allows everybody to share in that system that's there. It's everybody's on the same network. You get an assessment, just like with our cherry sheet, we get assessments for MBTA.
Okay.
This is the library assessment that's down there. And Meg, why don't we change that title there too, just for that budget item going forward? No, I'm glad you're asking these questions, because I mean, we want these to be a little clearer.
Because just computer expense, I mean, it sounds extraordinary.
Yep.
I'd rather see that one combined in with the internet charge and maybe have it be give it a heading and then some subheadings, so we just know,
Yeah.
Yeah.
so there's
Wales
more
assessment,
definition
so
as
that
to
way-
what it is.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Yep, we'll change that, we'll clarify that.
We'll ask the same question next year when it comes up.
So it's seeing better to change now, so I don't have to keep hearing it.
What we'll do, we'll make part of the change, and then we'll test them next year to see if we remember that part.
Why did operating supplies go to zero?
I think is what that was, let me just see, that is, because we combined a few different departments together,
Okay,
I think there's 2 lines.
then on the
too.
first page, we've got operating supplies
Yeah.
there.
Yeah, that's my mistake, because I had to pull, like, I had to pull from different departments. So if you see on the first page, it's operating supplies. So this is pulling like 4 different departments together, so it was an oversight on my part.
so that's the supplies for the 4
And then
departments
the 16,000 is for the 4 departments that are combined.
in community living.
Yeah.
Okay,
That's why that 1,000 you have on the second page is now on the front page.
okay.
Our software we have doesn't like structural changes when you reorganize departments, so this is part of us working through that process. So again, we're about $133,000 for the operating supplies for the Department of Community Living.
So, quick question on that GATRA subsidy.
Mhm.
That seems to stay level each year. Or what goes into that?
We got just the transportation, and
Yep.
what happens is, we pay for the drivers out of the GATRA, we pay for fuel, and then they also they collect money for passes, and it's the net money that they will request from GATRA to be reimbursed. But whenever they buy passes, it's like $1,000 a whack sometimes, and that's what that $2,500 really covers, is the cost of the passes, and the cost reimbursement for that.
Okay.
And it's a special boundary funds that can't go into a deficit.
So on rare occasions, we will provide free rides
Yep.
to those that are in need or there's an issue with that. This gives us the flexibility of doing that. We keep it at a small number because it's a rarity, but we do provide those in certain circumstances. And we're very judicious about that, or everybody would want to do stuff.
Yeah, it almost seems lower than I would have expected, but that's good.
It was, I think we had 10,000 in there 2 years ago, and we've reorganized how that process was done to get it down to this number. Okay. Veterans benefits, I think when Meg and I first came here is that, and those that have, I don't, if John Cotter was here, he would recognize this, is that every year we'd be coming back to the Finance Committee because the veterans budget would only have half the money it needs for the year. Every year, we've been putting $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 in there to grow it up to what it actually is and what the needs are. We're finally at a stabilized point where the 230 or the 240 is a good number. It still may go up 20 or down 20, but at least we're in the ballpark of where it needs to be. It's one of the few accounts that if you're doing a good job, that means you're providing more services to veterans, which means your costs go up. So it's kind of the only budget that you actually, and when it goes up, it's somebody's doing a good job, because that means more people are getting serviced. Now, part of that is attrition, so sometimes they go down because of that too, but this budget was never funded adequately, and now it is. So that's where we get
I do
240.
recall making those transfers.
And we don't do them anymore. Yep. And I mean, again, I'm not saying we're not gonna do it again, but what I am saying, it will be within the range of what is reasonable for a budget you have no control over. I'm a big proponent of, I hold department heads fully accountable for their known expenses, and if there's something that's outside the budget, then there's gotta be a really good reason why that wasn't known before. And sometimes it's not known, and okay, we'll deal with that. But if it's something that they missed, then we make sure that that's incorporated in next year's budget. Veterans is one of those things you have no control over. Just like sometimes with police, now I will say our police chief does a great job, but sometimes overtime can go crazy if you've got people that are injured, as it used to be in the town. You know, the people go out on 111F, and all of a sudden you get 2 people in the force that are out. Well, guess what? Everybody's working overtime. There's nothing you can do about that when that happens, except keep a healthy workforce, which is what we try to do.
That's right.
So that's Veterans Benefits. Historic Commission, you know, no change there. They've got $430. The Historic District Commission, they've got a whopping $260. Then we go into employee benefits. Let me take a few minutes to go through these. One of the items that we offer for the firefighters is a LoSAP program, which basically, Alan, you want to explain that? No, I'll explain that then. Okay.
I could, but I mean.
All right. So basically, it's a program that if 20 years service,
20 years.
if you do 20 years of service, then you get a small retirement benefit for that, depending upon, again, your age that you put in there, whether you retire 20, 25, 30, I think it is.
You don't collect until you're 65.
Okay, you don't collect till you're 65.
So after 20 years of service, it's $200 a month. 30 years of service, by the time you retire, at 65, it's $300.
So,
That's their retirement time.
so this was a program that the chief and the department put into play probably about 5, 10 years ago, 7 years ago. And it was really just trying to figure out, we're asking these men and women that get paid $16.50 an hour for the number of hours they work to run in and out of a building, whatever that may be. And this was just a slight benefit to keep people in there for a 20-year period, because there's a lot of training that goes into it. So it's a small incentive to get people to commit to a longer time frame for the department. This has nothing to do with the public pension. This is basically an annuity that is done through this investment of $120,000 a year that funds this for the different people.
It's a thank you perk, and I have no problem with it at all. The bulk of these guys that stay here for 30 years anyway.
Yeah.
So
I
this
would
is
probably
the
call it
least-
a retention perk, but the thank you perk works fine too.
It's a thank you perk.
Yep.
I still say it. I'm still shocked by one of your fellow members that said it's a privilege. $17 an hour to run into a burning building, and they think it's a privilege.
At the time that the LoSAP program was done, I think the hourly wage was like 12, 11 an hour. And that's only for when the tone goes off. It doesn't take into account all the training you're doing, the extra work, the outreach, fire prevention, all these other details, so.
It's amazing how well-known Carver is too, because I've been to a couple of functions recently, and when they knew where I was from, they asked the same question. How do you guys do it? How do you do what you do? They have staffed fire departments that can't respond the way we do.
Can't do it.
They don't get it. They just, I don't know how you do it.
This town is very blessed with both fire and EMS that are
Yeah,
both,
We are.
you know, provide the services that we do on the per diem or call basis that they do. We're very fortunate with that.
Yep.
So that's the call firefighter LoSAP. The next item we have is the Plymouth County assessment. Now, this we have gone up about $20,000, $23,000. But in addition to that, we have additional money set aside in the budget that's outside our operating budget. It's some of our, some of the funds that are coming from the solar projects. And with that, we're going to be making a direct payment out of that into the county assessment which will then also force the county assessment to do an actual analysis of just Carver's cost to run the program. So we're not blended in with the whole South Shore or Plymouth County, is that it'll be an individual piece that's in here. So in addition to this number, there is going to be another number that'll be for the school and the town's Plymouth County assessment tied into that. We're also hoping that next year, when we get the county assessment, given the way the stock market is, and again, this goes in cycles year over year, is that our assessment hopefully will go down next year. Just because when you look at year over year what the system's performed to date, it's been pretty good. So we'll see how that plays out. Unemployment payments, again, we don't have any money in here. As we did have a town meeting article fund 2 years ago, unemployment insurance to be used for both the town and the school when needed. So it's a separate outside line item that covers that, which then takes that issue when I mentioned before, if you ever have to lay somebody off, you're not laying an extra person off to cover the unemployment insurance, which is why we do that outside the budget. It's almost like a little mini reserve for unemployment insurance, rather than putting it into an operational budget. Moving forward to health insurance premiums, surprisingly, and you're seeing that this is level funded. And by no means take that statement to mean that healthcare is stable and that it's not going up. I will say that our Carver rate tied into our Gateway rate program overall is going to be less than a handful, or yes, less than a full handful % increase this year. But what we do have is that we do have some additional, with doing some of the reorganization that we've done, is that our insurance requirements aren't as much as we thought they were going to be in 2020. What you do see is that was a $200,000 increase. So that $200,000 increase wasn't fully utilized. So therefore, there is enough in that increase that was done that year to absorb the final increase we're going to have for this year without increasing that number, which is why that's there. And, you know, it's really something like that that has allowed me to come back and present a 3% COLA this year, because of a unique thing like that. There's that extra percent it's made because we've been doing the right things and really analyzing our budget and running things well, but it also takes a little bit of something like this to help us out as well. And that's where that additional amount came, which is about $22,000 for the additional percent. It's about $22,000 for an additional 1% increase for the non-union employees. So that helped with that item. From there, life insurance premiums, again, small number, and Social Security Medicare payments, we just budgeted up a little bit more given what we spent in 2019.
Why did life insurance go down?
Part of it is, it's not that it necessarily went down, it's that when we look back in 2019, you see we spent $4,500. And this year we're budgeting, or for next year we're budgeting $5,500. We think we may have, we know we over budgeted in 2020.
Okay.
That's there. So we don't need the 8,000. It's really just slightly going up above what the previous known spend was. And the life insurance is, it's an insignificant policy. It's like, I don't know, $5,000, $10,000 for employees. It's something that's added on to our health care that, God forbid somebody get into an accident, that at least they have some money available for a funeral expenses. Yes, Pat?
Michael, on the health insurance premium, so the school department still has their own?
So yes, the school department still has their own. We've spent a lot of years working on that one, and they didn't budget as much as we did last year, so our $200,000 is not in the same ratio they budgeted last year. They budgeted to the bare bones. We weren't sure what that was, which is why we put that extra money in last year. But no, the school department does still oversee its own health care. And there has been a proposal that we had several years ago for the town to take that over. That was also when the town and the school had equal health care shares at 75-25. Since that time frame, I'm going to bring your attention back to this sheet, is that if you look at the top line going all the way across where it says yes and no's, is that all of the town unions and non-unions now for any new employee, and again, that's another thing too, from a retention standpoint, healthcare has gone up on the town side to 50-50, and it's a big number, particularly for people starting out. But you see there that all of the unions have done that except for the teachers, it's still 75-25. So that's part of the issue why it's still kept different, is because with the town having 50-50 with new employees, our basis is lower per person than the school, which still has the 75-25. So to blend them together now and putting it under a shared account would then mean that that shared account would be additionally subsidizing the school. So ideally what we want to do is have the school go to 50-50 for its health care, and the selectmen have been asking them to do that for several years. The moment they do that, then it would make more sense to combine them and put them under one fund, like 98% of all the other towns in the state. But until you do that, it's you got an apples and oranges as to the value on that.
And we talked about that when I was still there.
Yes.
I figured you'd get that done right after I left.
Well, I will tell you this, is Scott still looks at me and he goes, you know, you presented that the first year, and probably the biggest mistake I ever made was not taking it then. I said, yep. And again, that was when we were looking to do it. And again, to his credit, he just got on board. He was dealing with a bunch of financial issues. He had so many other issues to do. It was a complicated issue. But so now we're just waiting. We're just waiting.
Okay. But unemployment now is shared.
Correct.
That was a great idea.
Yeah. Unemployment, we have several other things that we try to share on that. We do, as you guys know, we do have a couple other minor little stabilization funds that if there's, you know, a crazy cold winter that where it's sub-zero temperatures for 6 weeks like we were 2 years ago, 3 years ago, whatever the time frame is that we have a small set aside for utilities for an issue like that. Special ed fund. So, you know, again, I go back to a statement I made probably about 12 minutes ago, is that we hold department heads accountable for what they can control. If it's a Mother Nature issue, if it's something that's outside of their control, we like to have a defined stabilization fund for those particular items, whether it's special ed, whether it's unemployment, those type things, that we like to keep those available, that roll over from year to year. They just stay there. They're not being touched. They're only touched in an emergency, and we really never touch them. But we have them there, and that gives us and the school the ability to better budget a tight budget. And as you know, Pat, when you were managing this, is that, you know, after you got all the budget done, then it was like, okay, I got to add 6 more things to healthcare because I need a little buffer. And that's what would happen, because you would be forced to deal with those anomalies on a bad year that you had no control over, which meant you'd have to lay off people. So you budget high just for those. Now we're budget actual, and I think I've been very impressed, and Omeg has too, you know, in the last 2 or 3 years with Brad Brothers and Scott, that they focused on just what they need to do it, and we're in a much more accurate state than we've ever been in before. And you know, I'm going to go to you, Adam. You remember one of the fights we had with doing the new elementary school was no one trusted the school's budget. And there was reason for that. There was legitimate reason for that. You know, even though, Pat, you had to manage it that way, it wasn't always accurate. There's a lot of extra built into that. That extra's gone now. It's more accurate than it's ever been. I don't know how I got on that subject. Oh, well, it's healthcare. That was your healthcare question, Pat.
Good.
Any other questions? Bill?
Not a question, just a comment talking about the call firefighters, and the thought came to my mind that what they're doing and the salary and the danger they put themselves in. To me, it's like the true meaning of public service. You know, all this other stuff, negotiating unions and stuff, these guys doing it because of that. You know. That was just my thought that came.
I can guarantee you that both in the fire department and in EMS, they're not doing it for the pay. They're doing it because you have a committed group of individuals that are working together as a brotherhood, sisterhood, for the betterment of the community, as you said, good public service. And each one of those departments are professionally run, and this town spares no expense to give them the proper equipment and the tools to do their job. If they're going to put their lives on the line for the peanuts we're paying them, we have an obligation to make sure they have the tools and the equipment to do their job and the training they need, and that's how we're able to work with them.
Nice to see that bleed over into other areas of government, you know, throughout.
Bill, let's be thankful for what we have. But no, I mean, but seriously though, on that I would say that, and having worked in a city and in another town and been involved in municipal for part of my career, is that the team that we have right now, again, we've had a couple bumps that Steve Pratt's pointed out to us that we're working through, but those are just minor. We really have a good support system in this town with a lot of part-time department heads, conservation agent, building commissioner, health agent, COA director, that put in the extra time to make things get done. And that is, I think, a compliment to the staff that do that. It's a very good group of people that put out an awful lot.
Very lucky.
And, you know, I understand what you're saying, Bill, about the typical government employee. I completely understand that. But what I will say is this group in this town should not be put into that category. Just like our fire and EMS clearly aren't, I think the rest of the staff, and including the police department, has come a long way under Chief Dufely and are doing a lot more than what their peers are doing in other communities. Which I guess is the way that you look at this, is the output that's being produced in this town compared to other towns. We're in the top echelon of the state for output per municipal employee for our different departments from the services we offer. And that's all relationship to the people. So, you know, when Meg was able to come back to me with a big smile on her face and say, hey, I think we can do the 3%, you know, I'm proud to present that because I think that there's people have earned that.
I guess I was thinking of the state and federal level.
Don't push your luck.
I know.
But you know, that starts it all. And I'll tell you, here's the other thing that I'll say too, is my final piece on the soapbox. It's not only the staff, but for the last couple of years, I mean, this year we've had some silly stuff, toilet paper gate and whatever else, is that it starts with leadership. And the selectmen that we've had in this town, when, you know, 6 years ago, the financial management policies were implemented. And not only were they implemented, anybody could create a document and put words on paper, but they followed it. They followed it. Most elected officials, oh, this is too tough. The school's complaining too much, or this superintendent's complaining too much, let's just give it up. But this group held fast because they knew that in order for it to work, they had to hold true to what their statements were, and they did. And now we're in a financial position in town where this all works. And, you know, we have the respect of many communities. I mean, we had the governor down here giving us $3.2 million. I mean, no other town our size gets that, but they know what we can do and they know what we're here for. You know, and I only bring that back to the leadership of the elected officials because on the federal and on the state level, it's not only the municipal employees, it's who we elect at all levels of that. I'm not just talking the president or anybody else. It's Congress, it's state folks, it's federal folks, it's everybody, is that it takes leadership from there to really do the right thing. And we just got the right mixture right now to make it work. That I know it's painful for some people to see that being undermined. But when everyone's working together, public service, the commitment you guys are all making for this committee, the fact that you got 10 of you here or 11 on the board as a whole, That says a lot. That says the community cares, and you're trying to do the right thing. And for that, it's appreciative. It allows Meg and myself and others the ability to do our job that we need to do.
But you have to understand that this board is completely useless, seriously, without your help, without Meg's help, and the support of the select board. We couldn't do any of this without Meg, without the numbers, without you. You could throw paper at us, but without the definition and without the trust that we have in the departments, that it's followed because the system works. And that report card has come in. Just look at where we are, look at what we've built, look at how we still have money in the bank, look at where Carver is compared to where Carver was. Mm-hmm. And that report card is finally here. So it allows a committee this size to, honestly, we shine, but we shine because of the hard work from the finance department, the hard work from the town administrator's office, and the hard work from the select board. So, for me personally, I've made this statement before. We could never have done this. I could never have done this without the help from Meg. She's been instrumental in, I have a question, I pick up a phone, and I get an immediate answer. If I ask for something silly, it might take an extra day. And that's if it's something silly. So, my hat's off to the way the whole thing works.
And, we try to, Meg, and others, and Elaine and so forth, is we try to explain why we're doing things so that you have context and you understand what's happening, and then you can make your decision from that standpoint, versus just random statements that are made on social media that don't have any validity to them. And, I think that's the way to get more involvement and for you guys to have more understanding of what's happening, because, let's face it, Meg and I may not always be here, and eventually we'll be replaced, whether by our own choosing or someone else's choosing. And it's important for this board and the select board to continue the continuity of the good things that are happening in the town.
We're very fortunate.
I think the key word, Alan, was the trust that seems to be here now, which wasn't maybe in the past.
It wasn't at all.
Yeah.
Yeah, Bill and I over the last 6 years have gone head-to-head on many things and, developed the trust and respect of one another. Bill's on our Carver, Wareham, Marion Regional Refuge District, and he brought Bill in to help us, along with John Cotter, and at that point Dave Robinson, because we knew there was a bunch of theft going on over there. And, collectively we went through and fixed that. And, it's built on trust and confidence in what happens.
I also think it's good that there's much more transparency. We need a little bit more transparency, and I'm going to make a comment and committee member comments. There's still a couple of committees that are absolutely fighting recording their meetings. And I'll say it in front of this entire committee, and I've made the statement before in public. I think that the Board of Assessors, it's vital that they get out of their little hidden room in the back, that they go into a real office, they have a real meeting, and they have a tape recorder and a video recorder in that meeting. I think that's the income side of the statement. That's where the revenue is generated from. If they have stuff that's ultra-personal, they have executive session for that. Just like the selectmen are going into executive session tomorrow night to deal with a contract. But 90% of what the Board of Assessors deals with on a meeting-by-meeting basis is not executive session material. And yet, there are so many people, I for one, who have no idea what they do. Where do these numbers, we just all opened a tax bill, and I'm sure everybody opened their tax bill and went, oh my God. I know I did. And yet, this is where the tax bill comes from, is the Board of Assessors, 3 elected people hiding in the back room over there. Yeah, it's a public meeting, and I've showed up at a couple of them and been asked, what are you doing here? Did I ask anybody in this audience, what are you doing here tonight when you showed up? Because I don't believe I should be asked that question when I attend a public meeting. So, that's my 2 cents, and I was gonna bring it up later, so I brought it up now. This needs to be recorded, and I'm not gonna stop beating the drum until the assessors' meetings are recorded. It'd be nice if this entire committee would jump up and bang the drum with me. It's
So-
part of a transparent process that's in this town. Prior to Kate and I getting this involved in the board and me becoming chair, Kate being vice chair, these meetings weren't recorded. I think that's ridiculous. This is the finance committee. How can it not be recorded? We record a conservation commission meeting. We're not gonna record the money?
Minutes were done by a member.
And the minutes were done by a member, and you couldn't read them. So, I don't understand that. This is part of the, and this is where the trust comes in. The more transparent we become, the more trustworthy we become.
So I will say, just a couple comments on that, is Meg and I are going to be meeting with the chairman, Mike Paddock. I will say Mike has brought a new level of transparency than used to be there before, but there's still more room for improvement, I'm not going to deny that. One of the things that we are going to do is that the room that they have been meeting in is going to become a file room for the accounting and the finance and the assessing office. So that's part of our upgrades that we're going to be doing this summer. So that room is no longer going to be available for public meetings.
We have 2 nice rooms downstairs, we have a room over on the side over here, and we have this room right here. Does anybody in this room, other than myself, know where the assessors meet? I rest my case. There's a closet in the other room down there.
Alan knew.
Well, Ellen should know. He's been here for 134 years.
No, Alan and Ron came on the board, they, when a lot of these changes happened, to try to move the town forward in a better direction. I think at the next meeting, we're going to have more departments come in and present. We'll make sure we get public safety in here, operation and maintenance. We get the planning department in here, and any other group that you think is necessary to come in and kind of go over, those other departments. And again, we're just here really just going over the administrative stuff that we have right now.
This is great. I like this entire structure. I think this is going to simplify things a whole lot for the community living, and then for the finance department, I think it's going to make life a whole lot easier. It's a much better flow chart. So, and anything we can do to make your life a little bit easier, given the fact that we give you enough aggravation, the least we can do is, try to make some of it a little bit easier. Thank you very much. Anybody have any questions for Michael? Meg? Alan Dunham? Dan Badger? Well, we can get them all out of the way while we're here. Could ask Jim Hoffman if you got any questions for him. How's the playground coming? I don't imagine too many people playing out there, right? Although, I think there were cars at the school playground yesterday.
Oh, yeah.
I think they were using the playground out back yesterday.
Well, the weather we've been having is crazy.
Yeah. I put a plow on the truck, so there'll be no snow this winter, don't worry.
Yeah, good.
You're welcome.
They can actually use that playground over there?
Oh, yeah, they can. You can't, but they can.
When school's not in.
Yeah.
Anything else?
Okay.
Thank you
Michael.
all.
Thank you.
Thanks, Michael.
Thanks very much, Meg.
Thanks, Meg.
Okay, we did the minutes. There are no other topics. Committee member comments, I already said my 2 cents worth. Anybody?
Just a question.
Sure.
Obviously, these guys did a great job presenting tonight, and Mike talked about public safety and ops and maintenance coming in. Should we talk about which departments we want to see come in and present? Because I know you had mentioned the rec department
Yeah,
as well.
I rely on Michael to see who's ready,
Okay.
as opposed to us just saying, for January 27th, let's bring in public safety.
Gotcha.
Well, maybe January 27th, they're not all ready yet.
Yep.
So we may get operations. That's why the update, the agenda had to go out 48 hours in advance. But we didn't have committees yet. We didn't know what departments. Michael let me know literally Friday, and then I updated the agenda. You can do an update to the agenda up to the meeting, but you have to have the agenda posted, the notice of it posted 48 hours.
Yep, that makes sense.
The selectmen do it all the time.
Yep, they'll come in when they're ready, but do we have a defined list of folks we expect to hear from over time?
Are you thinking public safety next time, or you think operations and
I would
maintenance?
say public safety next, and then after that, then we will now get your police, fire, and EMS. And then probably another meeting we'll do O&M and probably planning.
Well, we've done, you weren't here, we've got 3 meetings scheduled, January 27th, I'll shoot you an email, February 10th and February 24th. So maybe on public safety, maybe we can do the police, and then do fire and EMS separate, just because there's 3 departments, however you think.
No, we'll do a public safety night your next meeting.
On the 27th?
Yeah, we'll do all 3 of them. We normally do that.
Yeah,
All
we
right.
did last year.
It's, you know, there's 2 people that are long-winded, and I tell them not to be long-winded. They're proud of the departments. And then the first meeting in February will probably be O&M and planning. And then your second meeting in February, we'll wrap everything up with that one.
That'd be great, we could get out early this year.
Yeah.
And maybe March, we can do something real quick with, Brad and Scott, just
Oh,
to
yeah,
see
that's
where
right.
the school is at.
Schools in there.
We have no control over the school, but I still like to sit down with the school.
Yeah, school and the recreation, I think would be,
Yeah, just so we know
Recreation committee.
where the school is at.
It was,
Yep.
yeah, it was good to hear. Do we know when town meeting is this year?
Town meeting is the 24th?
April 14th.
14th.
April 14th.
Also, the MMA annual meeting, I'll get everybody out an email with that flyer. And anybody that wants to, just let me know back, and I'll pick a date. Then I can just send everybody's name in and register everyone that wants to go. Let me know about 1 or 2 days, either the Friday or the Saturday or both. The town will pay for your admission. The town will not pay for your accommodations overnight, so. Can't have everything.
It's only $500 a night to stay
It's cheap enough.
Oh, George, you're paying?
down. Yeah, right. Take it out of my veterans fund.
So I'll do that, probably tonight, tomorrow. I'll get you guys out that information. So that's all I got. Anyone else?
I make a motion to adjourn?
Second.
Motion made and seconded to adjourn. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Good night. Thank you.